have Jody Hayes, a painter whose most recent solo show was at Night Gallery, Los Angeles, and recent two-person shows at Susan Inglet Gallery in New York and Devoning Projects in Chicago. She is the recipient of grants from the Rauschenberg Foundation, Foundation for Contemporary Art, Sustainable Arts Foundation, Tennessee Arts Commission, and the Elizabeth Firestone Graham Foundation. Other residencies include Oxbow School of Art, Stoveworks, the Cooper Union School of Art, Hambridge, and the Vermont Studio Center. Her work has been published in Art Forum, New American Paintings, Hyperallergic, New Art Examiner, and Two Coats of Paint. And her paintings can be found in many public, corporate collections, including J. Crew Group, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, and the Birmingham Museum of Art. So Jody is very accomplished. So it's always nice to hear your accomplishments read out loud, right, Jody?
Yeah, record those and send them to my dad. He'll be very proud.
Send this to your dad.
I will.
So welcome everyone to our latest seminar on gallery packets and PDFs, and welcome Jody Hayes.
Thank you so much, Jack and Ruth. Thank you to Creative Lattice and Parge for the invitation. There was a little bit of imposter syndrome when Jack asked me to present on gallery packets. I'm not a designer, I'm an artist. You know, there are all these images, I think, that maybe packets or assets or things like that kind of conjure in my brain whenever I think about it. And I'm going to give, the first half of this is going to be very much about mindset. Some of you are going to be super into it, and some of you are going to be like, yawn, I really want to know like how to make a PDF and what like resolution it should be and stuff. So to set expectations, I'm going to talk about kind of motives before starting to get your PDF going or making a PDF or why you're going to send it. And a lot of that has to do, I could not for the life of me think of a better metaphor than this, but there's often people talk about how someone might fixate on a wedding as opposed to like the lifelong partnership. So I'm going to talk in this case a lot about the lifelong partnership of like what these assets can do for you and your art making and your practice and your career, as opposed to just the wedding, which in my mind is like the PDF that you're sending out to people or the catalog that you get printed. So we will talk about those, but I'm going to kind of couch it in a little bit of like vision casting and a place that you might have to, if you look at this recording again or for the first time, it might be helpful to go back to it and kind of just like sit in the first few slides. And I can make this available to Jack if that's helpful, just the PDF. Sound good, everybody? Okay, so I love this quote. I am not necessarily advocating that you read this entire book. I'm a little lukewarm on the entire book, but the quotes are amazing. And just to give a little bit of context, like artist careers grow and mature often late. A painter needs to produce a whole body of work into which she might invest years without ever knowing she'll succeed. That's on Alice Neal. It's supposed to be a hopeful thing, but also like we're in this for the long haul, right? And it's about making the work, and some things don't turn over for some of us overnight or within graduate school or even postgraduate school in the first 5 years. So just as a context, I want to say that also for context for my own practice and career, a lot of these things aren't going to apply to you. Some of you, maybe you have like high level branded MFA programs that you paid a lot of money for. That is great for you. It's a choice that I did not make. I got into one of those and didn't want to go into debt. So those are not qualifiers. It's just saying like you might not need to do exactly what I needed to hustle and do. You might have other assets that I don't have. So that's not to say that anyone is better or worse than the other, but just know that this is my own experience and this is why I did it. So this is what we usually look like, right? In the studio, we're solo, at least for me. I don't make work in collaboration very often outside of teaching. So this is what it looks like a lot for me. I had this picture on a timer at my recent residency at the Hambridge Center. But the idea is you want for your shows to look like this, right? I mean, to be fully transparent, this is a picture taken at a university, and I'm sure all the students got school credit for some class for actually being there. But this is what we want, right? We're solo here, and that's how we make the work, but we want the work to live in a world, at least I do, that's like communicating contemporary structures, our contemporary moment. Like, we want there to be a dialogue and interchange and communication. So that's where visibility comes in. So I didn't title this like how to do gallery packets or how to do, although there will be some of that, but it really is about, and I think I feel this even more being mid-career, for whatever term that means, but feeling that we want our careers and our work, we want visibility. So how does that happen? How do we engender that? How do we enact that? How do we drum it up? That's kind of what we'll be talking about. So again, these aren't rules, but just some context. I do a lot of research, kind of, it's like the one thing I know how to do. And I think that comes from a lot of places, but having grown up in the middle of nowhere, I think is part of it. So you kind of just like figure out how to find the things that you need. But this book is Navigating the Art World. It's fairly new, actually. It's from Delphian Gallery. I hope I spelled that right on the slide, but this is it. It's really small, but they have some nuggets in it. So I'm going to have tips on navigating the art world today, which center around assets and printed materials, and when you have digital assets, mostly the gallery packet. But there are also many other ways to figure out how to widen the net of visibility for your own practice and work. I mean, Jack knows this about me. Like, we meet on the regular, and it's always a process. Like, there are end goals, but it's also just like a reminder. So this is also a talk that I will listen to myself again because I need to be reminded. So here's just a couple of things. I had a ton of screenshots from this book, but just go by it. What can artists do to get their work noticed? Group shows, self-promotion, present their work on your own terms. So you could do pop-ups. I've done pop-ups in this space where I'm in right now, which is my garage studio. For context, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. So that's important for you to know in terms of like my visibility on a larger scale, meaning the coast, New York, LA, Europe, wherever, showing in a geographic center that's not my own. Keep on making your work. I mean, that's an obvious, but some years it's just a matter of not sending stuff out to galleries, but just making the work over a year or two, giving yourself that space to make it better. Become part of your scene with the intent of adding to it rather than like agenda. I think that's huge. And I think it's something that I probably had embedded in my DNA growing up in a town of like 1,000 people, where you just are a part of an ecosystem and you are made to contribute as opposed to just kind of like take. So make your own opportunities, have a web presence. This is also from the book. Meaning, if you're doing all this work to have these packets and PDFs, like, make sure your web presence is also there, and ready and solid, and maybe it looks similar to in brand to the things that you're sending out in the world, catalogs, books, all that kind of stuff, because it's all building this case for your work in the world. It's not just about your work, it's like building the case for the work. And then creating community, whether that's artists around you in your studios, in your PTA groups, I don't know, like wherever you find your community. A lot of it is, I find a lot of my community is in New York City, and that means, I mean, I don't live there, but that means I'm kind of in conversation with that support group. So the big picture. Some of the best items of advice, or just advice I got before I sent out this big push of gallery packets in early 2021 was from Bridget Mayer's Art MBA. was in the middle of the pandemic. This is where I'm going to get a little granular about my personal experience, just so you have a context for the why of when I sent it out. I found by mid 2020, I had 3 kids in virtual school, which those of you who know are having like to check yourself with anxiety right now. Those of you who don't, bless. It was a lot. And I also found myself in that the bizarre timing was I found myself making the best work I've ever made in my career. Some things locked into place conceptually and formally that never had. So I had, and I also had the loss of a job in academia. So I found myself saying, like, I can't chase this academic job that no longer exists due to like bizarre circumstances as well. So I really thought, well, what I want to do is make work in the world and send it out and have galleries. So I had begun to do research, and I was able to figure out in that really intense time, okay, what agency do I have? I didn't have a lot. I was tethered to a computer because my 3 kids had different class schedules, and I was like zooming them on and off, and it was really intense. And so I didn't have a ton of time, but I couldn't let that be my narrative. I couldn't let myself think, oh, I can't do anything right now. And I have a partner as well who had a job, so I also want to like I'm not creating like a victim picture for myself. There were some great things that I had, including my studio in the backyard. So, in an effort to be proactive and find some kind of agency, I enrolled in a program called Art MBA by Bridget Mayer. I think it's still happening. You can do it too. It was on Facebook in the early days, but I want to give a lot of props to Bridget Mayer. We don't always align in our philosophies on where art places in the art world, but she's amazing, and I found so many nuggets. One was growth mindset. So especially in mid-career, it's really hard for us to have, like, from my perspective, like 20 years of experience, of no's, of yeses, of how things go for other people, of comparing. It's super hard for me in the middle of Nashville to think, yeah, I think that I should have a solo show in New York. You know, I'm not entitled, but the work is this and the work is good, and or wherever those measures of success are for you. So the Art MBA helped me figure out what my agency was. It was just like a Facebook group every 20 minutes, for 20 minutes every month. So whatever that is for you, whatever group you can be a part of, or just for me, it was like, I don't know what more I need to know. So maybe I'll do this class. I've been teaching professional development for at least 15 years on the collegiate level, but I still was like, okay, growth mindset. What else can I do? And I'm living in the middle of the country, and it's not an arts center. It's certainly creative and there's a lot going on, but doesn't have a ton of gatekeepers on a larger scale. So my goal was to gain visibility, and it wasn't to get a represented gallery. I mean, that is one of the things I would like in terms of advocacy, but that wasn't it. I just needed people to know I was in the world making this work, and people needed to know about it. That was kind of it. The pro tip I put on here is unexpect everything. That comes from Brandi Carlile, the singer. But the idea is like no one owes you anything. Just put things out in the world with goals and strategies, but also like back off kind of holding people to things or feeling like you're entitled to things. So a lot of this was timing for me. I mentioned the work was the best it's ever been. And keep in mind, this is 15 years after my MFA. I have a healthy showing record, no gaps. I had 3 kids in 5 years, no gaps in there. So like this isn't coming from, I wasn't just emerging having not done anything, but in many ways for the work to be at the next level, I knew I needed like broader reach. So what this brings up to is, what does success look like for you? We're not going to cover this in like the 2 more minutes I spend on this slide, but it's really worth thinking through those things. I know Creative Capital has curriculum out on this. There are many places you can find it, but sit with that for a little bit. Like maybe a commercial gallery isn't what success means to you. For me, I want to be in that system. I'm in that system. For a lot of reasons, like that is the system I don't feel super complicated about, but I know a lot of people do. So just figure that out, which is really hard, but 20 years in, you probably know. And just note too that there's an investment in this when you're printing materials. I think I added up at one point. So this push that I did in 2021, outside of all the hours, I don't think I added that up monetarily, the hours I spent on it. But I think it costs like $2,500 or $3,000, and that's designers, trading, photography, printing, stamps, envelopes, like all the things. And not everyone's got that. I had this little pocket of money that I'd never had that came from like the sale of this tiny house of my grandmother's. So from 10 years ago. So like I just decided this is what I saved going to not a name brand MFA. I was going to reinvest in myself on the back end because I am mid-career and I don't have the same amount of years left as I had when I started this out in my like mid-20s. So depending on like what you can do, a monetary investment for me meant this shows that I mean it. It's not the only way to show that you mean it, but a carefully designed catalog, sharp assets and materials sent out. Like there's going to be a lot of discussion from everyone you talk to, from gallery people. Like we don't ever look at those. We throw them in the trash. We don't take unsolicited submissions. That's true. But growth mindset says if I send it to 200 and I get back 2 and that becomes a relationship, I make this back in 1 sale, which I have done. So that was kind of my mindset. Like I know half of these will be thrown in the trash, but for the 5 that aren't or the 20 that aren't, those are relationships that you tend. So that's kind of a background on like intentions, and then a way maybe for you to set up a set of questions that helps you kind of illuminate for yourself, why the hell would you do this? So in terms of functions of your assets, I've kind of touched on some of this, but the above image is just a small book that I published after reaching out to someone I had been connected with over Instagram. Now they're a friend, Jen P. Harris, amazing artist and writer out of LA. And she saw the work at Night Gallery and wrote this essay. And then I used the images from the gallery. So this is like a little book that wasn't the first thing I sent out, but it was served as a follow-up to curators and things like that after I made this like big digital PDF and packet that secured this show for me in LA earlier. And then the one on the bottom was an artist book that I published concurrent with the show in LA. And it was designed by the designer that I traded with initially to make the digital assets, but also the catalog that I sent out. And it served as like a poetic in tandem. I read a lot and like do a lot of research. So it kind of was this other, I liken it to like Amy Sillman's early zines that she would publish and concurrent with her work to kind of translate it. If it was in a show in Germany that she had, she'd make these amazing zines to kind of like bridge the language barrier. So I kind of used her practice as an example. And then you have, so print, of course, it could be a catalog, show cards that are correspondence. Maybe you make a postcard to follow up 6 months after you send a catalog. Social, so this is also just a reminder that your web presence needs to be like tight and ready as well. So this could be your site, interviews, social media. A lot of times I've heard back that from galleries that I don't know what's happening, but they'll come back and say, hey, I showed your site to the team. And so just make sure your site is also mirroring the level of detail and like competence that your assets are also bringing. So digital as well. So there, I did ask the designer, Katie Martinez, she's Hello Keiko, so shout out to her. I asked her to make a digital PDF too, because I'm not a photographer, I'm not a designer. It was worth it to me to spend that money, whether it was in trade or cash or whatever, for someone else to do it, and it saved me the hours of figuring it out. And it's always wrong if I try it because I'm not a designer. Turns out it's hard and I don't know how to do it. So often when I send a follow-up, like a PDF, if I haven't sent them a packet in the mail, I would send a link just so and it goes back to my Google Drive so people don't have this like PDF, even if it's like a smaller PDF. Some people prefer not to have an attachment. I don't know if that's changed or not. And then you have an archive. This is like on in the future, but I'm at a point where I'm starting to think more about my legacy and kind of where all of these assets live and how they fit into kind of my annual output and like what will my kids read about what I've done in the world. So just a note on like knowing your helpers. This comes from Bridget Mayer's Art MBA, where you're like, I'm going to make a packet, I'm going to make a catalog, I want people to know. Well, who are these people? So just as an exercise, think about who those helpers are. And this is what I also tell to my undergraduate students as well, which are a little bit different in their career. Mostly they're like peers or people from their undergraduate degrees, or like their careers are much shorter at that point. But for me, it was galleries that I knew about it. And the idea wasn't that I would brain dump. I brain dumped everyone. It was like galleries I'd been to, galleries I knew about, people I knew about, not to say like, show me at your gallery, but to say, hey, here's what I'm working on. And if you have anyone you'd like to share it with, please feel free. I've got digital assets that I'm happy to email you. Let me know, Jody. It's kind of that kind of thing. So think about galleries, curators you've ever known. And those of you who are not mid-career, I'm mid-career and I tell my students, start right now. Like make an Excel spreadsheet that has all of this. If you want to go in deeper, contact Bridget Mayer. She has a lot of like assets that help you develop this, but mine was like a really janky spreadsheet that had collectors. I think I started with the Dallas Art Fair in 2019. This is like 2020 early. My idea was like, if galleries from all over the world are going to Dallas, then they know that Arkansas exists, which is where I'm from. I mean, they don't have to love Arkansas, but I was like, this means that they already are predisposed to not thinking that only good art happens on the coast. So that was just like my idiosyncratic way of like starting somewhere. So my Excel sheet, I don't think I have a screenshot of it, was curators, collectors, peers. Here's a group here of artist mothers that I'm in contact with still. So people from I had different sheets. I have one that's students who are now like old enough to be curators and gatekeepers in ways. So that's just kind of an idea of like, who are you going to send this to? So spend some time thinking about that too. Okay, so now we're actually to the part that Jack asked me to talk about, which is catalogs and PDFs. So I actually I'll show you some images of what I actually sent out. But I sent physical packets. Like packets is the nerdiest, dorkiest name. But I don't care. Like it was something I hadn't tried. So I am solidly Gen X, tail end of Gen X, I should say. And when I first graduated graduate school in 07, or 06, we still sent out packets. Like there was email, of course, but there was still kind of practice of sending your portfolio out on a CD that you burned. And so I maybe did that. I also went through a cross-country move, and I don't think I did this in any concerted way. So when I got this advice from Bridget Mayer, I thought, oh, well, you know what? Growth mindset. I've never tried this, so I'm going to try it. Maybe some people don't have to try this. Maybe you have professors and you're hooked up by the time you're 25 and you're rolling. That's amazing. That was not my story. But if you're convinced that your work is good and deserves some wider agency, then maybe making a physical packet is going to be good. So I would say this, make sure you have really good images, the best you can buy. So whether that's through a trade, get a commercial photographer. I'm going to show you some images of like, I show these to my students, but pictures that I took that I thought were pretty good with like a good camera and in the end, like you end up trying to doctor up these like pretty crappy images that are passable when you could just pay someone. Again, I know this is not cheap. Um, and I am not rolling in money, so I get it. But it is worth the time and all that for someone else to do it. So consult the experts, designers, editors. I had Patty Johnson look at my CV before she started Network, which is also an amazing resource. But she looked at my CV and my artist statement. I was like, look, you don't live where I live in the middle of the country. I need for who your audience is in New York to look at this and tell me like what lines up, what's the value system there, because I want my work to show where you live too. So it might not be someone in New York. It could be somewhere else for you. And obviously photographers. And I already mentioned having like your digital assets ready too, if you're going to make the push to do this like big physical push. So here is me on, and the black shirt is a picture I took of myself. And then the other one is my photographer, Sam Angel, who comes in, takes pictures of my work, and then sometimes take pictures of me, which is great. But there's a difference, right? The lighting is so much better, like, and this one too, like it's uneven. I have a garage, so I will like put the garage door up and I hope it's even, and then it ends up just not being amazing. The one on the right is just so much better. So here's where I was. I already told you I was in like virtual school, logging in to my kids' school. But I had this desk set up. I moved my desk from our where my office was up to the kids' playroom, which is like really close to their room. So, but I was doing all this in the middle of it, and I was probably not an effective virtual school teacher, but I never wanted to be one anyway. But here's what it looked like. The top image of this black envelope is what I sent to warm contacts who kind of knew me. Maybe it had a studio visit with them, a curator, someone that maybe was an independent curator. They didn't need a whole lot else but me giving them a catalog and then maybe a handwritten note that said, here's what I've been working on this year. I'm super excited about it. Let me know if you have questions or want to send this to anybody else. I've got a PDF. And then the bottom one was for, and this is straight up Bridget Mayer. I want to give her super props. This is, I included in mine, and this can be different for you, whatever makes sense to you. I had just gotten an art forum critics pick in January of 2020. So hell yes, that's going in there. People who say that press doesn't matter, I'm like, I think it matters greatly. It mattered greatly to the brand that I was trying to make more visible. So I have the printed catalog, which is that first thing with an image on the front. I keep all my assets super spare and like just spare design. I don't want any bells and whistles. It looks a lot like my website, just very clean. The work is very like texture heavy and laden and like title heavy. So I keep the assets like clean and let the work really speak. So that's about a 20-page catalog. I think the magazine settings on Blurb, and I'll make sure that link is available in the resources. I have a resources document that Jack will share. And then I had a couple of reviews at an art forum. I think I had a New Art Examiner. Maybe it's New American Painting, like whatever kind of flashiest press. I did not think that people would read these with a fine-tooth comb. These are, and I don't have a color printer, so these are all just black and white. But I made a Word document with the logo, like Art Forum at the top. Hell yes, I'm going to use that. And then a section of it below it. So I made my own documents and then printed them. And then I did a letter tailored to each person, not just the gallery, but each person. So I had to do the research to figure out like, who's the director? Do they take unsolicited submissions? I did not send to anyone who didn't, but if they didn't say they didn't, then I sent it. And again, part of your research is, are they a fit? Like I didn't, out of maybe 2,000 places that I have researched and have come to familiarize myself with or refresh my memory on, many aren't a fit for my work. I make difficult abstraction, and that's not a fit for, say, a place that shows highly figurative work or emerging artist only, things like that. So just know you're still not just kind of willy-nilly sending the stuff out. Like it's targeted and you're kind of doing all the research. It's a lot. I know it is. I know it's a lot. But if your work is if you believe in your work, this might be good for you to support it in this way. At least it was for me. So on that side, I have like the letter to them. I did a self-addressed stamped envelope in the back so that if they wanted to send it back, they could, which some did, which was great. So the stamps that go on that, all that. I think that's, oh, and a business card. I have heard even this residency at Oxbow was a lot of like younger artists. They were like, oh, we don't use business cards. We're not for it. I am. So I use a business card. I put it in that little place that these folders have in them. Here's what just a snapshot of my hard drive. I use a Google Drive looks like. I have a gallery packets. I haven't sent out packets since 2021. I mean, I do refresh. Part of my administrative practice is like revisiting this every 2 months, or if I have a show up and kind of look at something new. I have had or asked Katie, my designer, to refresh the PDF so that it's got newer work in it. And you're not sending people an archive. You're sending people like a tight, especially if it's a gallery, a tight body of work that communicates best in 15 to 20 images who you are and maybe a variety of sizes. This is a commercial, if it's a commercial gallery system that you're working with, they're going to want to see like that kind of breadth, I think. So then I still have like a folder of my letters, all my press, and then a list of sales. Sometimes galleries want to see that like later in conversations. Here's what Command Central looked like. I showed you my desk that I was logging in on myself and Schoology or whatever you logged in on. And then behind me was this. I had like the system down. So it's like the envelope, the self-addressed stamped envelope. I did these cool little stickers with stamps that had my name on it or my address, little embossed. Here's a stack of catalogs, and here's New Art Examiner, Art Forum, or something else. And then I would just, this is one of them already packed up and ready to go. And then like I would send about 5 a week, average, maybe 2. And I did that for a couple of months. Okay. I know it's a lot. It's so much, but it can pay off. Maybe it won't, but it can't. It did for me. I just had to believe. I was like, people are telling me that this is going to go in the trash, but I have to believe this is going to work. So just keep in mind that this is an administrative practice. Like I know it's not making your work. If your work isn't there yet, don't do this yet. I probably sent out, I sent out just a few right when I graduated graduate school, and I'm not sure the work was not ready. Maybe we have to believe the work is always ready. Maybe that's part of the joke of our practice, is that we always feel like it's even better and better, which it is. So it's administrative practice. Show consistency in your work. Again, this isn't an archive. Like you don't have to show like 15 years worth, just like a snapshot, because you have these digital assets ready. Maybe your catalog's only like 6 pages long. Maybe it's all you need. And maybe it's going to be different for everyone, but just know that you have like your website and social media, all that stuff is ready too. When I was doing this, I also highly archived my Instagram presence to be a portfolio presence. There were not a whole lot, no mom post, and I love being an artist parent, but just kind of like made it very clear what my goals were and who I wanted to attract, like the stakeholders for that. Follow directions. So if there's already something on the site that says we accept digital submissions and it's this, do that. And then, it can't hurt to send just the catalog and the thing and say, hey, I sent a PDF per your instructions. I hope you're having a good day. And then send the real thing, meaning the physical thing. Keep your styles consistent, like website, Instagram, like all your assets should have like a consistent vision. And no one owes you anything. Like, this is the hardest thing, I think, for me, mid-career, to go like, yeah, tried it, do your best, be kind. No one owes you anything. Like, people have really complicated and full lives, and the people that will be connected to your work will be the ones who are connected. All the other people, there's a lot of them in the world. Just try and not think about those people. Just, it's okay. Like, don't, like, this isn't, that's a way of talking about like having a generative practice, and not a scarcity mentality, like, and not holding one person or one entity or one gallery or one curator. Like, yeah, just kind of keep it easy. But also revisit these annually or quarterly, like you send these out and then follow up. I have on my spreadsheet to as early as last week, because I have a show up right now in Houston, a group show. Hey, I sent a packet a couple of years ago. Actually, this show in Houston came directly from one of these packets. I didn't know the gallery before. I sent it, and the director was one of the ones who emerged mid 2021 and was like, hey, I am so sorry. This thing has been on my desk because we haven't been working from the gallery. Would you like to do a studio visit? So 3 years later, like, I have a group show with amazing artists, some historic, some contemporary, that comes from what I'm talking to you about today. And I also say too, like, the timing of the pandemic, I think the moment, like the post George Floyd moment, that made institutions have to breathe out and expand who they look at. I definitely benefited from that, because I live in the middle of nowhere, and I think Zoom studio visits, all of that, like, it was one concerted effort that there's no way you can plan this stuff. And certainly it was an intense time. So I don't mean at all like in an opportunistic way, but that was happening, and I never got Zoom studio visits before. And there was kind of an awakening in the art world and every other place that, like, this world that we live in, this ecosystem, isn't equitable. So how can we change that? So it wasn't my intention, but I just want to say I definitely, living in Tennessee, I definitely benefit from stakeholders who were like, yeah, I'd love a studio visit with someone in the middle of, momming in Nashville. This is from Hilton Oz. I love this quote. One of my favorite critics and writers, living critics and writers. He's talking about writing, but it connects to art. What makes writing such a profound occupation is really it requires your complete dedication and humility. And when you grow into your voice and find your voice, there's your joy. Wanted to like end on like, that's the reason we're doing this, right? Like, the packets, the wedding isn't the reason. It's like this holistic, we are looking at the world in a different way. We're advocating for a Southern Pavora that maybe hasn't been on a broader scale at the Whitney Biennials, or whatever that reason is for you. Like, there's a joy and a mission, or however you want to couch it, to what you're doing. So it's not just about the transactional, go on Blurb, print this out, send it to people, and expect something back. Like, there's kind of a holistic thing to it in my view. So that's it. I just want to say thanks to Parge, to Jack Lahav, to Creative Lattice, John Ross, who's a close friend, and he runs a place called Studio L. And so many of these, this gleaning and knowledge comes from like your peers who are going to be on this road with you for 20, 30 years, and cheering you on and being excited for you and getting jealous, but also working through that jealousy. I'm not saying John is of me, but like but just being each other's people when it's just uncomfortable, when it's comfortable, celebrating each other. To Network, Patty Johnson, and to Bridget Mayer's Art MBA. You can find me, Jody Hayes Painter, on Instagram, and also Southern Crits, and a couple other places, but those are all linked like on my website as well. And you can find that through my Instagram. And that's all I have ready. I wanted to kind of, Oh, we're good. I wanted to have enough time for question and answer because a lot of this is really specific to my context and my personal story. So if you have follow-ups, maybe things I didn't share that you wished I would have shared, um, yeah, I guess now would be the time. If you have, maybe there's questions in the chat. Should I
Yeah, I
look
can
at?
read you the questions in the chat.
Okay.
First, can you say a second on what is a good format? Like, have you found there's a good format for your packet? Um, like
Um,
intro text, maybe an image. Do you include an image of the artist with the work? I notice you do that a lot.
yes. And I'll also, I didn't embed a video of this, but I have if you go on Blurb, you can preview my packet. I'm not saying you need to buy my packet, but you do have to pay for it if you're going to buy it. I don't have any
Right.
free ones, but you can preview it. And I found I had a title page, also like talk to your designer. If you trust them, like they will know what works. But I wanted an image of myself. I wanted a truncated CV. So if you've been doing this for 20 years, don't put all that on there. And plus, it's going to take a lot more money to print it. 15-page CV. Don't burn that. Do like a one-page truncated CV with just like your highlights of your career. That kind of like shows your value or brand. So I did, yeah, maybe 10 or 12 images, not full bleed, but like big on the page with all of their details so that the person looking at it knew the size and all that. Um, and I'll make sure that link to Blurb is on that resources page too, Jack, to get that to you.
There's another question that's on a similar note, so I'm just going to skip around a little. Uh, by Maria asked, what if you have multiple series and themes? Do you put them all in one catalog, or do you combine them to show a variety of work? And I have an answer, but I want to hear your concept.
Uh-oh, is this a trick question? Um, I get it. I mean, I get it. I have that too. I've got these like collages, kind of, well, abstract based collages. Then I've got like a whole thread of like found sculpture that's like real zany and weird. I think that you research, you have it all on your site. Um, most of us make work that is cross-disciplinary these days, and most curators and like, I think gone are the days where people are like, oh, you're not professional if you're hopping around on different mediums. Like we are so hybrid based now. But I also think you should do your homework. And if you're going to send, I mean, I have like small discrete paintings that I know some places are going to be more connected with than others. So maybe that's a matter of having it all housed on your site. But I would say if you're going to go to the expense, like you want a tight group of work, but that doesn't mean that the work doesn't only presents as painting or only as sculpture or only a social practice, but maybe it's in writing that you connect them. You have to do the work to show the connective thread in your work to like make a case that the work is consistent and examined and researched and comes from, one place, that you're not like skipping around. Did
And
I answer?
yeah, I think that's a great answer. I have kind of an opposite answer, uh, which is I just met with like kind of an old school gallerist, and I do a lot of like different projects. Most of my stuff is like different series based. And she was like, "You're way too confusing for me. I only want to see like one series
Hmm.
and know that you're focused on that." And that also led me to think that there are different audiences for everything. And the gallery, if you're sending it to a gallery, they probably want to see, I'm assuming most of them, one series that's something that they can sell. Whereas if you're sending it to a curator, they want to see something that is culturally important or like that is part of the dialogue that they're working with.
Yeah,
So there are different audiences, but remember that
true.
galleries are in the business of selling work, so um,
Yes. Yeah.
that's
So
different.
perhaps you have like a 20, I think we kind of said the same thing. You have like a catalog that's for curators that's more, more like, or less sellable. Maybe it's not an object. I don't know. Um, And then for a commercial gallery, maybe you send a truncated version of that, which is like a type. Yeah. I tended to do that and just to trust, like, okay, go to the website and if there's other stuff on there for curators and stuff. But my main push was I need at least 3 commercial galleries that represent me to do all this work so that I can free up time to make work. And for the record, I'm not there yet. Like this all started in 2021. I'm definitely like moving towards that. Being represented is like defined many different ways nowadays, but yeah, I just want to be clear about that too. This also takes a lot of follow up and time and relationship building.
Jackie asked that if you are looking for a written piece for your PDF, how would you go about getting the attention of writers, or um, do you look at local or something more out there? Like what do you think about the getting an essay or something for your work?
Yeah, I think I put the essay in the back of my catalog. I for the catalog, it's going to really help if you've been around a while and you've been curious. So part of that's just like being an artist in the world who reads writers, who contributes. Maybe you write yourself, which is always nice for other writers to see that you're willing to like stick your neck out and contribute in that way. I ended up using one piece was a press release for a show I had in early 2021 or maybe late 2021. I can't remember what the first, maybe I didn't have an essay like that in the first catalog. It was just my truncated statement, images, and CV in the back. The second one that I had, the reprint that was like refresh of work, was a press release from Scott Zier. I had a show with a gallery called Zier Smith, and I really liked his writing. But again, we'd been exchanging studio visits for maybe 5 years. He's a poet who likes art, and I'm an artist who likes poetry. So there might be those people in your life. With the follow up to the night gallery show, um, the little piece that I showed you, it was like a 5x7, maybe 6-page. Jennifer Harris had posted about my work on the Coastal Post, which is an Instagram site, or an Instagram handle. And I love their work. And we started a conversation. I reached out before the LA show. She showed up to see the show, which was amazing. And though she didn't write a review of the show during run of show, I reached out later and said, would you be willing? And if this is a possibility, could I compensate you for this? So I did pay her to write for that essay, the essay and then the images. Because I mean, the images that Night Gallery supplied me are amazing. So I wanted to make sure they had some legs. So it can look different, like, but it usually takes some time unless you already have like blockbuster work that like people you don't know are like raving about and gonna write about it because they're so excited. It's totally possible. I do find that there's some work involved with connecting with people, connecting based on similar interest.
You
So
have
yeah, maybe give yourself a year to look at
Jody, do
artists
you
who
have
are
how the
writers.
art forum one
What's
happened?
that?
Do you have an idea of how the art forum article happened?
Yeah, so Emily Weiner wrote that, and it's funny how these things work. I didn't remember this about Emily, but she was an artist in Brooklyn for ages. She's born and raised in Brooklyn or New York, and moved to Nashville maybe 5 years ago. But I didn't remember I did this. But she was on the Sound and Vision podcast with Brian. I'm blanking. I'm so sorry. But anyway, she was on the podcast, and at the end, she was like, "When I first moved to Nashville, there were our mutual friend introduced us, and I asked her, I just like sent an email. She was like, "Hey, my friend's moving there. She doesn't know anybody." So I was like, "Cool. Hi, Emily. Nice to meet you." This is like, I don't know, 3 years before, and I don't understand time anymore. Um, And we did a studio visit. I don't think she came to my studio. I think I went to her studio first and just was like getting to know her because I'm a person in the world who's a painter and a thinker. I didn't know that Emily was a writer. And when I had this show, it was this tiny solo show in January of 2020. Um, she said, I really want to see the show. I was like, great. It was kind of a hard place to get to and get into. It's not a regular kind of commercial gallery that's staffed. So she's like, I really want to see it. Do you have photographs? I remember talking to my gallery at the time, like, I don't have pictures. And I think, maybe you need some. And she was like, yeah, there's going to be a fact checker. I'm going to write about the show. I was like, that's amazing. And then she's like, I'm going to write for Art Forum about your show. I was like, what? This never happens in the middle of nowhere. So that was really just like unexpecting everything. Like I didn't expect Emily to be someone with that kind of leverage. I didn't not expect it. It was just like she's a badass painter who just moved to town. She's a mother. We have a lot of connecting points. She lives in my neighborhood, like maybe 8 blocks away at the most. So that's how the Art Forum thing came about. Not expecting that at all. So um, that gave me, I've told her this too, like she knows that, like she knew she could leverage this like little show, probably has been read about, which says a lot because no one reads anything more than people saw it. Like it was just a small little show in a tiny little gallery in a church in Nashville. Like,
Jody, more questions. So Bonnie has a lot of like pretty good logistic questions.
mm-hmm.
So for like on a cover letter, and there's a bunch of questions nested in here. On the cover letter, do you have a specific ask that you're asking for like a studio visit? Then she says, do you present the whole show as like here's a show or just here's my work? And you also, I mean, she says this as a question, but um, talking about the gallery itself and how you fit in with the space.
Yeah. Okay. So I would go back to do not, this is my friend Laura gave me this advice actually, and she still does. She's an art writer and just like amazing. Laura Hudson Hunter. She says, yeah, don't expect, like don't put your heavy expectations on whoever you're sending this to. Like state who you are, what the work's about, but in the gallery letters, I mainly and there was a form that Bridget Mayer had to follow, but I kind of diverted a little bit from that. But I said if I had been to the gallery, if I knew some of their artists, I wrote that in there. Um, for example, Bridget Donahue, I love that gallery, and just a Jesse Reeves show that I saw like kind of changed my brain. So I wrote that in there. Like, this is my connected points. Otherwise, I don't know anyone personally at the gallery. So it could be that. I mean, don't kind of like overreach with people you may know or not know on their roster, but do familiarize yourself with them so that they know you've done your homework and you appreciate the work they do in the world. You're not just asking them to appreciate your work in the world, but their work too. Because I mean, I wouldn't have a career if it weren't for the people on the other end of reading these letters. So I do have a lot of respect for what they do. And so there wasn't, and the ask is at the end where it's like, here's who I am, just like in a sentence. Here's the kind of work I make. I'm Nashville based. Should you be interested in a Zoom studio visit, or if your path takes you to Nashville, let me know. I mean, that's kind of the only, and I don't couch it, I don't couch my, I don't give them the show. If it's a Zoom studio visit or something or a PDF, I don't do that. This is just a conversation that you're opening up. This isn't a proposal for a show. Now, some galleries do have open calls for proposals, and that's a whole different thing. And you're like, here's my show. I'm going to get out the floor planner with your floor plan, and here's where I would put these pieces, and it's a two-person show with this person. My packets were not that. They were, hey, I am out in the world making work, and I think you might want to see it. And if you don't want to see it, please feel free to share with your colleagues who you think might be interested, which has happened. A couple of people have circled back and said, so at this gallery showed me your stuff, and I'm at this gallery. Let's have a studio visit. And that's how the Devoning Project show happened in Chicago. Yeah. So I wouldn't be that prescriptive actually in this context.
Also, just from our conversations, Jody, I think it's important to note that don't just send these things to galleries, send them to your gatekeepers too. So people who you know who are active in the art world, maybe other artists or artists who are at galleries that you like, that
Yeah,
you know, of course, it makes it much more of a strong connection. But I know
totally.
your exhibitions didn't come about from the actual gallery, but from, the gatekeeper,
Yeah.
right?
The night gallery thing never would have happened if it weren't for I sent a catalog, just a catalog to, we're not like, we're buddies now, but we weren't like super close buddies. But someone whose I really respect, they had moved from LA, from Nashville to LA to the East Coast. I didn't know where they were in the pandemic. Everybody kind of scattered, but I tracked down her mailing address, meaning I asked her, and then sent a catalog and said, she was a curator, independent curator, and she had a gallery for a hot second. And I just said, this is what I've been making. And she followed up and said, can I send this to people who I think might be interested? And I mean, you can ask people to do that for you. I have known people to do that. Like, would you send this to this gallery? I didn't take that approach. And I'll say the difference was like a one sentence, here is this artist I know, and here's their PDF, as compared to what this person did for me, and she offered this like years later. She wrote like a 4 paragraph thing on my behalf to this gallery in LA. So not to say like replicate that. You can't. I wasn't sending her that to say like advocate for me. Like we had a studio visit 10 years prior. She had a gallery. I never sent my stuff to her because it was very clear that she was showing like artists on this level, but we had a good relationship, like a working relationship, and had a lot of mutual friends. So it could be that person that you're just like, I'm not telling you what to do with these assets, but here they are. And let me know if you would like something more from me.
And do you
Yeah.
have thoughts on sending out physical packets versus just a PDF?
Um, yeah. I mean, that whole talk was just like my thoughts. Like, I do think I have no way to quantify this except for like what has happened in my career in the 3 years since I did this. But I, for someone like me who's mid-career, like just the investment, maybe it's some kind of weird mystical thing, but the paying for and like staking my flag in the, I'm going to mess up metaphors. The investment it took to do it, both physically, administratively, um, financially, says I mean this. Like I am in this for the long haul. Notice this. This is me being visible. And I'd never done physical packets before. So that was a lot of it too. Just like, I don't know, but I've never done it. And I'm done with saying I can't do it because it's not going to work, even if I've never done it before. So I just was like, I'm not going to shut down that argument. I'm going to do this. So I would say, yeah, try. If you've never done it, try it. Maybe it's not going to be a $3,000 investment. Maybe you figure out how to make it a $200 investment. Maybe you don't put a self-addressed stamp envelope in there. I don't know what it looks like for you, but for me, it was important that I had a beautifully designed package of information that said, I'm here. I'm literally like, my work is taking up space on your desk.
Yeah.
For
And
the record, a lot of those I never got back.
I'll say that after one of our first studio visits personally, you sent me a thank you, like one of the little zines,
Hmm.
and I really appreciated it as like, I didn't curate your work into anything, but I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and you stuck out as a thought
Hmm.
in my
And
mind.
here we are.
Yeah. Ruth,
Likewise. I mean, you've
yeah,
sent me your books. Like, yeah.
yeah, I think it's nice. People don't get that much actual nice mail these days. So I think it does make you stand out. Whereas we get tons of emails and I delete tons of PDFs.
I know. And I mean, I had a pen pal when I was in a Japanese pen pal when I was in like, I don't know, for like 20 years of my life. So I'm already a believer in mail. I'm old school. So for different generations, it might feel different, but yeah.
Ruth, do you have any questions or take over?
Oh, I can just take over because there's several questions in the chat that I think are really important. So Catherine's asking about the essay and about the writing, and wondering just if it's important, and I think Amy's question goes along with this, if it's important for the person that writes your essay to be like of importance, like to have a name, or if it's more important for the writing to be good, I suppose.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, the first iteration, and I'm not gonna unshare because we're in this like beautiful moment to give you the blurb, but the blurb link, but I'll make sure Ruth and Jack have that. The first iteration of my PDF in my catalog, the printed catalog, didn't have any writing except for my statement. And when the second one came around, I just loved the writing. It was icing on the cake that like Scott and Andrea, who runs your Smith, had like a deep bench of a life in New York with a gallery in Chelsea. I don't know. I mean, I just love what Scott wrote. So I used like a paragraph, asked him if I could, and used a paragraph. So that kind of added to like some of the street cred of what I was doing. Also, the art forum critics pick was also something that rang really true. So I could have put that in there too. Maybe I did. I don't know. I feel like some of the best writers I know aren't writing for art forum. I mean, they're just like really like Brian Edmonds is a friend of mine in Alabama doing like amazing work. He's a thoughtful writer and editor, and I would put something in by him. I mean, he's not unwell known, but he's not Jerry Saltz or Roberta Smith. But I think that has value. Like even if in terms of tending your own community, like that's what half this is about. Is like, oh, Brian's in Alabama. Would he write something for me, or has he written something, or could we trade? Could I write something on his work? And yeah, I don't think it has to be like a flashy name, but if you got that, I mean, everyone I know who's gone to flashy grad schools, they always have that on their bios. So whatever you have, like the thing is, not everyone is confident in this world. Like not all the gatekeepers know what's good. That's true. Like not all the gatekeepers are going to read. Not all the gatekeepers trust that your work is good, even if you didn't go to the top 3 graduate schools. That's unfortunate, but it is the truth. So like sometimes you have to show them, like here, Art Forum said this, and it may take, for me, it's taken 20 years to have those assets, like a New American Painting. I think I applied like 17 years before I got in. I don't know why that is. It's not like everything they print is like amazing. But does that answer Amy and Catherine? I can't see your faces, so just tell Ruth or.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And then another question is about finding designers, photographers, especially I think similar to you, Austri lives in Idaho, so they kind of also live in the middle of nowhere. If you have any advice for that.
I mean, designers are everywhere. And also the designer that I met, I guess this goes back to like, make sure you're tending to your own like personal ecosystem. She was a mentee of mine through a program called Artist Mother. It's a podcast, but they also have like crit groups. And in 2019 and 2020, I was a mentor through the Artist Mother podcast. So I had like 5 or 6 artist mothers over like 3 months. We were sharing our work. I was like doing some teaching. She makes her own work, but she's also a designer. So I was just like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I know it's really not what you do professionally, but could I pay you? Could I trade a piece of artwork? So the first thing I did was like someone in my immediate sphere. They live in South Carolina, which for those of you who don't know, the geography down here isn't super close. She lives like 8 hours from me, maybe. And we knew each other I have met her in real life now, but we knew each other only through Zoom and Marco Polo, like in those early times. But ask your friends around, like, do you know any designers who might be interested in this? Maybe it's students. Maybe I already have my eye on one student I met through a Vanderbilt talk that I gave to their um, seniors, and she's the only one out of like 20 students that wrote me back 2 months later, which I encourage them to do. Like, when you do your helpers, put me on there. I'm the first one on your Excel spreadsheet. And she did. So I've already been like, cool. I could, especially younger designers or just starting out. I don't mean to be ageist. You could be starting out in design in your 60s or 70s. Um, People who want some portfolio pieces, maybe people who want to trade. Maybe you know a collector who's a designer and they'll trade a piece with you.
And then I think, Catherine, I think this question came up, but Catherine's just reiterating it because it was missed. It seems like you are, researching as one of your strengths. So what are some tips that you have for like researching those galleries that you've sent these to? How did you kind of go about that whole process?
No, there's no secret. You just have to spend the time researching them. Like, like there really isn't a secret. I mean, I do think I am very stubborn and feel the work deserves the advocacy, my own advocacy, and that of others. But part of it's just like going to the website, look at who they show, read the press releases. Like, I just did maybe 2 a day during this time. It wasn't, or 3 a day. Like, and you can usually get a good idea whether it's, sometimes I go to the way that their site is designed and I'm like, not for me, don't like it, or whatever. Like, it's not going to fit what I do. So some of them are just like really easy. I didn't only look at, say, the art fair in Dallas, but all of those have their rosters posted. So that's where I started. It was like one place I could go for like 200 galleries or however many. Instagram's a great place. I wouldn't only rely on Instagram, but it's a great place to, when I see a gallery I don't know about, maybe I'll follow them, but mostly I do a screenshot and then email it to myself so that when I'm back researching, I can kind of like um, go back to their site more easily than like looking on my phone. I mean, shortcuts are like not this. I feel like this is like what you do when you don't have some of those like industry shortcuts, whether it's like graduate schools or someone that you knew from private school that's now a big fancy curator somewhere. Like, those are all amazing things and you should use those if you have them. I don't have many of those. So this was a way that I could go, well, I can do this. I can use my brain and throw my Hail Mary in this way.
Are you focusing on just the States right now, or are you also sending abroad?
I had a couple that I've sent. I mean, it's really costly to send a packet to Berlin, I found out. Um, what I'm doing now is I'm kind of at a point where the spaces that have shown my work have tethers in other countries, whether that's through actual presences in Europe or it's through art fairs that they participate in globally. That I'm kind of there, where it's like a gallery will then share my work with someone like their peers.
And then that makes sense, that's the network you start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Bonnie's asking, when you go to the fairs, do you hand out catalogs or do you stick more to cards and just making
Bonnie,
the
have not been
connection?
to a fair in ages. It was on my list to go. I was going to go to Miami actually last year. I haven't shown in a fair. It's definitely like something I want to contribute to with my like legacy and work, and also my pocketbook. Um, I wouldn't. Fairs are not. I mean, the conventional wisdom is fairs are not. Galleries are working their asses off, and they are trying to make the 1/3 of their budget that they make when they go to fairs of their annual budget, or it might be even more than that, a half. I've heard a half. No, that is not a place to like drop your stuff unless you're already in a relationship with the space. You go in and say, hey, like, do not. I had this happen actually in the last month. I couldn't go to an opening of the show in Houston. My sister lives there. She totally surprised me and went to the opening. My sister's a civilian. She is not like an art gatekeeper person. She's a teacher. She's wonderful. 6th grade reading teacher in Houston. She goes with her husband and she FaceTimes me, which was so sweet. And I was like, oh, is so and so there? And the contact that I have at the gallery. She's like, I don't know. Well, she found the person and the person was talking to someone for a long time. And my sister was like, I can talk to her. And I was like, no, she is working and she is talking to collectors and she's doing her job. Do not interrupt her. She is selling work for some artist on the floor. Do not. So I would say don't, unless someone asks you, maybe have something small ready, or this is when I believe in business cards, something that has to be tucked in somebody's pocket. I wouldn't. They're working really hard and you're not the reason why they're there unless you already have a connection to them and you go in support of what they're doing. Like, hey, I wanted to see so and so's work. Good job. Have a great day. Just like this is for, I think fairs are more for like artist research and they're a complicated thing. It's a reason why I haven't been in person to them, but if it makes sense, I also have 3 kids and like a lot of time constraints. We all have some kind of constraint. But I will do it at some point soon because it makes sense to just like see how things are going. But I haven't been in a while.
I find if you give someone a card at a fair, they essentially just put you on their mailing list.
Yeah, maybe tell them, please put me on the mailing list. Maybe it's not like go to my, go see.
Yeah, it's just a way to like get on their mailing list. It's just they're also just gathering context. It's sort of the
yeah.
experience I've had.
To that end, you can also get on a mailing list for someone that doesn't take unsolicited submissions. I know the gallery that used to represent me here in town used to take them and now they don't. But you can always, sometimes there are forms based on their website that say, sign up for our mailing list and there's a space for a message. And that's when you can say, oh my goodness, I've just been on your site and I really love this artist work. Not like a long thing, but like, I'd be glad to be added to the mailing list. And that kind of starts more of a conversation. Some of them are just forms that you email or you send out and it just automatically adds you and there's no message. But if there's a way to like personalize that, that's also, the equivalent of going to a fair and giving someone a card.
Is there a chance I could clarify that question a little bit?
Sure.
Not
much, but
I guess my question was, you had mentioned the Dallas Art Fair in your previous conversation. I was just wondering, maybe I misunderstood, but maybe you made some connections by going to the Dallas Art Fair. I misunderstood.
No, this is I used their website and you can use 100 others as a way to start researching galleries.
Got it.
And I gave you my rationale for why I use Dallas. You can do whatever. It doesn't have to be an art fair. If you're not into a commercial gallery system, you're not going to do that. You're going to go to the like Association of Museum Curators or whatever. I have found that because I've lived in the same region for about 20 years, maybe it's because I'm a mother and middle-aged or whatever, I need for curators in my region to apprehend my work, I need bigger stakeholders in other places, fancier places, to advocate for the work. And I've seen people come around here after other New American Painting, LA, those places. And that's okay. It's frustrating, but it's like, that's okay. You had to, not everyone, like I said, like not everyone who's a gatekeeper is super creative or has a good sense of what's good. And like, sometimes people take the long way.
Bonnie, I did the same thing with the Chicago Art Fair. You can normally just find a list of
Yeah.
everyone who's there, and then you can just like go through them and
Yeah.
look them up.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Thank you all for listening. Please plug into Parge and Creative Lattice, such like connected, expansive communities for artists. That's a place to start. Like when you start thinking about like your helpers and why you'll be doing this and what do you expect to give in support of it, like whether you're going to say, you know what, it's not time for me to like ask for someone to write about my work, I'm going to write about something this year. I do think that could be an amazing practice if more artists, if we all wrote once a year about an artist's work as a review, like a small publication or something, like that would change the whole ecosystem instead of always wanting someone else to write about our work. It's not easy. Writing is not easy. It also gives you a really good appreciation for like the craft of writing.